Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit more about what was going on with this transgender movement lying that's going on. There was an episode here recently with Dr. Phil where he had Matt Walsh and these transgender activist liars, because that's what it is now. Are they lying on purpose, or is it unintentionally? Do they really kind of believe the lie? I'm going to say a little bit of both, because people do get confused, and so I don't know. But I made a video about it, talking about why this was lying, and whenever I saw this video from, the title of the video is Gender Advocates and Matt Walsh Debate Explained What is a Woman, and this is from the YouTube channel Nate the Lawyer. And he did a kind of a good job taking two different positions on it. But I realized that what was going on was that this is a straw man argument. There are several questions being asked because it's so general. So I wanted to watch the video and then talk about the problems with all of this and how this is more than one question. Well, I'll go ahead and say that right now. And I'll leave a link in the description below for the Nate the Lawyer's video here too, if you want to rewatch it or watch it without my commentary. But the questions that are being asked, one is legally, what should be done with transgendered people? Another one is morally about the issue. And then the last one, socially about the issue. Those are kind of some, three of the bigger questions kind of being asked here. Maybe there's some more, but this is good enough.
He did a show on the gender pronoun controversy. Now, I'm someone who loves to understand the arguments and try to get an honest evaluation of the situation. Now, this video is going to go over the history of the issue, the arguments presented by both sides, and I'm going to let you decide which side you find more convincing. Now, I'm going to have links and citations throughout the video of these activists who are arguing against what's known as biological.
Okay, so a little bit of the history is kind of okay to know. There's nothing wrong with it, but I think to really kind of answer these questions, you don't need to know it. And so kind of, he did put it in good perspective of that one side's arguing that being a man or a woman is rooted in biology, and then the other side is arguing, well, you can't do that with gender. It's kind of this open area, or as they like to say, because they hijack every word they can get their hands on, is fluid. It's like, no, you want it open. You want it open for interpretation from person to person. It's like, and what that is, it's just it's a lie, because you're playing games, because it's not rooted in anything other than your feelings and your emotions, and those just come from you at a whim. All our feelings and emotions are that way.
Determinism. Now, biological determinism reasons that human behavior is directly related to an individual's physiology. In this case, we're talking specifically about a person's biological sex.
And it's not just that. It's not just what you're physically made of, but it's also what are you made of that allows you to do and not do things. Because that's not the end of it. It's okay, yeah, we're basing this off of biologically, X and Y chromosomes and a uterus or not, but it's more than that. The reason why men and women have these traditional roles of where men go out and work and women stay at the house is because they had to. People are taking for granted current situations compared to what it was like before. So, for example, men had to go and work because they were the only ones who could do it. They were the only ones who could go and farm the land, forest trees, mine iron and coal, drill for oil, go fishing off of the Bering Straits, lay bricks and pipe and haul around lumberjacks. They're the only ones. Women cannot do this stuff. It's just like men outperform women in every single sports. Just like recently, the Women's Soccer League is talking about this gender pay gap, which is not true because they are giving two different plans to the men in the Women's Soccer League, and the women took one plan and the men took another. And what's funny is if they both accepted the other one's proposals instead, they both would have gotten paid more. And I don't know why they do that. I haven't looked into it. I would think that after kind of this debacle the first time, that they would have said, we're just offering one plan from here on out because the Women's Soccer League sued. And then they just signed a new agreement and they're suing again. It's like you had the opportunity to take whichever one you want, but really what they're doing is, if you've been following along with that, is that they're just cherry picking and they're saying, well, we want the best of plan A and we want the best of plan B. And they're fighting this just for themselves and not for the men. So they're extremely sexist trash. But men are the only ones who can do this. Men are the only ones that can be farmers and all these hard, incredibly laborious workers. Now, women are starting to do some of these things, but it's not because they've changed. It's because things have changed with our mechanics and technology. So, for example, there are women who can go out there and they can do some farming because we have things like tractors and combines. If you got rid of those things and it was back to just animals and it was just people doing what they could physically along with their oxen or whatever, women couldn't do it anymore. And women have a hard time doing it today, even though we have tractors and combines and all this stuff to help out. There's still a lot of physical labor involved with it that really limits them in what it is that they're able to do. So if you ever hear a woman say, oh yeah, I'm a farmer or a rancher, it's like, no, you assist farmers and ranchers, and I'm sure they do a fair share of work around there. But this isn't a right or wrong thing, and it's not up to your imagination. You can't just say, well, I think I'm a man, and now I'm a man. It's like, no, you're not.
Critics argue that assigning mandatory gender pronouns based on biological sex is wrong and offensive. See, they reject.
Okay, so whenever they did all this with gender pronouns and all this stuff, these terms have been along before this movement happened, before you could go out and you could get shot up with hormones, with testosterone or estrogen or anything. That was never the way these words were intended. And they're hijacking them because they know if they were to truly identify these correctly, which some of this stuff would probably need new terminology, is that it would sound stupid because they would be doing exactly what should be done, which is you're just making shit up. That's all you're doing. You're not based off of anything. This is just you.
Reject the notion that biological sex determines social norms. They argue that pronouns such as he or she should be based on a person's psychological beliefs.
But you can't do that because we have no foundation for that at all off of your psychology.
Not an objective biological evaluation of their sexual lives. Now, this distinction between one's psychological beliefs and their biological reality is the difference between sex and gender. Now,
and she does, and he'll show it here.
Here are the LGBTQ plus advocates on the Dr. Phil Show explaining the differences between the psychologically based gender and the biologically based sex.
How do you explain the difference between sex and gender? Explain the difference between sex and gender.
I consider sex to be our biological makeup. Our chromosomes, our hormones, our genitals is a biological makeup. But our gender is more of an internal sense. So think of it like this. Sex is between the legs and gender is between the ears, right? It's how we see ourselves on the inside.
Now,
Dr. Phil's talked about this, or no, maybe it was Jordan Peterson. I forget which. I think it was maybe Jordan Peterson. He talked about how, there are absolutely men out there that, for whatever reasons, they have feminine traits to them and vice versa with men. And the response to that is, so what? I don't care. you can think and feel whatever you want. It doesn't change you. You still are what you are. You still are what you are rooted in biology. There's no way to gauge this. If there is, we haven't found it yet, and I doubt it's going to be anytime soon. Not during my lifetime, probably not during any of your lifetimes out there either. But who knows? It'd be like 60 more years, I would say, because it's definitely not going to be in the next 20 years. And so what they're doing then is they're just making this up. I just feel like this. All of your feelings come from you, and it varies from person to person. That's why you can have some people who just feel like, oh, I just absolutely love this. This is the greatest thing ever. And other people are just like, this is the worst thing ever. You see this with like politics. There are some people out there who just believe Democrats are the best or the worst, and people out there who feel like Republicans are the worst or the best, or Donald Trump or whatever. And it varies from person to person. You cannot gauge it. This all just comes internally from each and every single person. It's like right now, you do not know what my feelings truly are. Actors do this all the time. They put aside whatever it is that they're feeling, and they act out and they portray a completely different persona. And it's because it's not rooted in anything. My biology can't be changed. No matter what you do, there's no way to give me a uterus. There's no way to give me breasts. I can have fake ones. I can have implants put in, but that's not real. I will never have a vajayjay. It can be cut off and there can be a hole put there, but it will never work. I will lose feeling because they'll cut off nerve endings. And that's what happens in reverse. It's the same thing for women. It's like it doesn't work. It's not real. It doesn't work like that. So all of this is fake. It is a lie. And you cannot go from person to person figuring out who they are. There are 8 billion people on the planet. Really, in part, what they're talking about is you as a person, as your identity. It's like, yeah, and we identify people because that's what your name is. That's part of what identifies you. Except what they're wanting from society and from the law and from sports, it has no utility because it's a lie. Whenever you're talking about identity and somebody's name, that's putting in a lot of things. Okay, well, that's Mary and she's a teacher and a single mother. There's utility behind that. It's like, oh, okay, well, a teacher, so those are some traits that they've learned. It's calculable, it's measurable, and being a single mother or mother in general or whatever, those are things that they either serve some kind of utility or they're tangible in some way. Saying, oh, well, I'm a guy and I feel like I'm a girl. Well, that's no different than saying, well, I'm a human and I feel like a Wookiee and you should call me Chewbacca. It's like, that doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't, it's just nothing. Now if we were together and we were role playing or something, then that would change it. But I'm not interested in dressing up and playing role play the opposite sex. I don't want to do that. Any more than I want to dress up as a Wookiee. I don't want to do that either.
Distinction between sex and gender started in the 1960s.
Started in the 1960s. So what about before we had all this going on? What was gender? Gender was a term based off of your biology. They're just hijacking everything.
Gender was tied to sex. Biological men were assumed to have the psychological gender traits of masculinity, while biological females were...
Yeah. I'm just going to let him play for a little while.
...presumed to have the psychological gender traits of femininity. Dr. Robert Stroller in 1968 began distinguishing between the terms sex and gender. See, Stroller wanted to explain the phenomenon of transsexuality, where a patient's biological sex and psychological gender didn't match. Now, Dr. Stroller would identify subjects based on biological sex and then describe the amount of femininity or
I don't care about the history as much.
Now, by separating both sex and gender, it allows Stroller to better express the phenomenon that he was investigating. Now, Stroller reasoned that gender was the social expectations of society on a person's biological realities. Think about it this way: the way a man was expected to act versus the way a woman was expected to act. Now, if we fast forward to the 1970s, prominent feminists.
But it's not just that. They're expected to act that way because that's within their capabilities. This is not within a woman's capabilities. There are no women out there who can beat this guy up. There's not one single woman on the planet who can take this guy on. This guy would steamroll over me. And I need a haircut so bad. And people want you to play your role because I don't have time. I don't have the time whenever I'm out there. I don't want to hear. I don't care about any of that stuff. I want things to be as safe as possible because the world, there's like a billion ways that we can die. Just with eating. There's so many things that we could eat that it would just kill us. And some things that we could even eat in some quantities, but the more we eat of it, the more it's going to reverse and it's going to kill us. I mean, just take water. You can drink so much water that it can kill you. It takes quite a bit, but you can do it. Alcohol poisoning is another one. There are people that they just drink too much alcohol and it kills them. So, for example, whenever you go driving on the road, whenever you do what you're supposed to and everyone else is doing it, you feel very safe on the streets. But if somebody's just swerving back and forth, then it's like, no, I don't want this headache. You know, I just want to be able to get around. I've got my kids or whatever, and I don't want any problems. But you know what? I want that everywhere. I want that whenever I'm going to the store. It's like, I don't want to hear your damn gender pronouns. I just want a burger and fries. Shut up. Do your job. Hey, I don't care about your politics. I'm just here to buy a phone. Stop telling me about your activism. I don't want to hear it. It's like that for everything. But that's not what these people are doing. They want to make things more complicated surrounding them and what they want. There's no utility in this. And this is just coming from their imagination.
The way a woman was expected to act. Now, if we fast forward to the 1970s, prominent feminist Dr. Gail Rubin applied this concept of sex and gender to feminism. Dr. Gail wrote, so feminism should aim to create a genderless, though not sexless, society in which one's sexual anatomy is irrelevant to who one is, what one does, and with whom one makes love. Now, 20 years later, Dr. Linda Nicholson, in her 1994 paper, Interpreting Gender, sex is determined by their genes and hormones and so forth, but their gender is something that they put on to express that gender identity. So you can have a situation where you have a biological male present as extremely masculine to extremely feminine or anywhere in between. Respect.
Yeah, and it's like, is that real? It's like, well, yeah, of course it's real. We know of people who are born physically impaired in some way or another. People are also born who are mentally impaired, where something has happened with their brains, and we know this because that's what mentally disabled people are, where it's so bad or it's affected the area of the brain where they can't even function. So it's like, does it happen in other areas of the brain where it affects the way that they kind of feel about being a man or a woman? It's like, yeah, absolutely. Why would that part of the brain not be subject to that? That it's just going to be perfect every single time with every single person. It's like, no, of course not. So it's like that's important to kind of understand. You know, it's like there's a few people, there are very few people, but there are a few that they have both male and female parts between their legs. It just happens. But again, this has nothing to do with right or wrong. This is just something that it just happened. Just like with men and women going out and being at home or working out there, it's not a choice. It's not right or wrong. It's just, that's just the way that it is.
Spectrum. Now, it's important to know that each society imposes on the biological sexes their cultural expectations of how both males and females should behave psychologically. You may have heard the phrases, be a man or woman's work. See, the modern feminist movement promoted.
Yep, and that has to do, what he was just describing, though, was culture and what culture has a part of it. We're not talking about cultures. We're not talking about what they do over in Japan or in Germany or wherever, or Muslim countries. We're not talking about that. But because even with these roles, it's like these are roles given to them based off of their sex. These are not the way that you see most societies. The guys don't dress up like this in I guess here in the U.S. or over in Japan. They don't dress up like this. They're all different. You can differentiate between men and women.
The phrases, be a man or woman's work. See, the modern feminist movement promoted this.
Yeah, and again, because we want to know what we're dealing with. We don't want games. The only time we want games is privately on our own time.
View of a genderless society to empower women. See, in the 1960s, the culture.
That does not empower women because that's not women. It's just made up BS. It's children. It's childish.
The norms were that women stayed at home, cooked, and raised children. And these gender norms were based solely on biology.
Holy crap. It's so weird getting older because it's like she looks like a kid, but she's probably in her 20s or something. But you get to a certain point where even people in their 20s and even their 30s, it's like, how old are you? You look incredibly young. Oh, damn, you're that old?
Sex, woman's work. But by separating the biological aspect of being a woman from the cultural aspect of acting like a woman, women would be empowered to go into roles traditionally held by men because they're.
Yeah, but they can't do that. She isn't doing anything. That woman is not doing this job that she's portraying here. What she is doing is she is standing there barely holding this thing up for a photograph. Because you can wish until the sky falls. Women just don't have muscle. Period. Or are you going to lie and say, well, no, every single woman athlete has intentionally underperformed every male athlete, that there wasn't one who just said, screw it, I'm going to beat the pants off of everybody. It's like that women's soccer team. They got beat. This was the U.S. Champions Soccer League team got beat by 15-year-old boys. So saying genderless is not going to do anything. It's not going to change anything because it doesn't change your biology.
They were seen as more masculine. So modern feminism believed that by removing.
Yeah, so these are not women doing construction. That's not what they're doing. They're dressed up in this gear, but there's all these machines and all this equipment back there doing it. And whatever this is that they're doing, I promise you, guys dominate this industry. That there are going to be men doing a bunch of the grunt labor here. They're going to, like this right here, these rolls of whatever this is, they're not loading and unloading this. There's some men around who are doing that. And they're just operating the machines. And it's the guys who are doing the heavy lifting.
As more masculine. So modern feminism believed that
being seen as more masculine does not change it. You are not. Because you're not strong. It's not right or wrong. It's just, it is what it is.
By removing that psychological stigma, women will be empowered to work in fields traditionally dominated by men. Now, today, the modern LGBTQ plus movement has taken that work started by the modern feminist movement and incorporated it into their struggle. But they made one major change. See, the feminist movement specifically worked toward a genderless society, but not a sexless society. See, the feminist movement embraced biological sex as part of the movement and celebrated it. Now, in contrast, the LGBT plus Q movement promotes both a genderless.
That's so stupid. Gender is over. No, it's not, because sex isn't. It doesn't matter that you've grown out your hair. It doesn't matter that you've got a boob job. This guy will never get pregnant. All right, I had to pause. I had a phone call come in. A friend of mine got in a car wreck. Drunk driver hit him from behind. been spending time with him, and so I kind of lost my place on where I was with this. I'm just going to pick up where the video left off.
Promotes both a genderless and sexless society. Advocates argue that biological sex associations with words like woman and man should be changed into arbitrary labels based on an individual's personal view of what they believe.
Okay, so the problem with the personal view is that it's your own personal construct. It's like, why limit it to just that? Because you're just talking about your imagination. That's why they have 31, 32 genders or whatever that they recognize in New York. Z, Zer, Fairykin. I mean, they have all kinds. And the list just keeps growing. There's no end to it. That's why it's LBGQ+. It's because it just keeps going. There's no end to it. There's no utility in it at all whatsoever. And it's like, well, what if you were to apply that to everything? You would get nothing done.
A woman and man is. Take the word woman, for instance. It's defined in terms of biological sex and gender. But LGBTQ+ advocates promote both a sexless and genderless society. So the word woman is undefinable in that view. This is why LGBTQ+ advocates, when asked to define what a woman or man is, they can't. Check it out.
And even tell you what these words mean. Like, what is a woman?
Well,
Can you tell me what a woman is?
No, I can't. Because it's not for me to say. Womanhood looks different for everybody.
So if it's different for everybody, then how are you supposed to know? I don't know. You would not know how to treat someone or act someone because it can be completely random. They can say, I'm a dolphin. So I don't know if you watch South Park or not, but they made fun of it. And one of them actually did all this surgery stuff to be a dolphin. He thought he was a dolphin. It's like, no, you're not a dolphin. You are not. It's just, no, absolutely not. And Matt Walsh, he wrote a book about it. He wrote a book about, well, some kid said that he's a walrus. And at the end, they do all this surgery and they throw him out into the wild and he dies because he's not a walrus. Well, I don't know if they went that far with it, but they talked about how the parents were going to release the kid into the wild, and I think they stopped it there. But he would die if they did that stuff.
What do you define a woman as?
An adult human female.
And what is a female?
That's someone with female reproductive organs. You stood up here and said trans women are women. Yes. Tell me what is a woman?
Yeah.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if... Just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I'm not
You
myself.
used the word, so what did you mean when you said trans women are women? You don't know what it means,
right? So,
Yeah, see, such a bullshit thing. He says, keep being interrupted. It's like, no, you keep avoiding the question.
So what did you mean when you said trans women are women? You don't know what it means,
right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because
I tell you what, I saw that and that just pissed me off. It's like, you don't want to be interrupted. It's like, you're not answering the question. You're straw manning it. You're not, he asked a direct question and you are not giving an answer.
You don't know what it means,
right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman.
Because you have decided in your head that you don't want to be a woman. You don't get to do that. Just like you don't get to change your age. It's like, how old are you? You are what you are. It's not right or wrong. It's not a decision. It's just, it is what it is.
Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
that
who
describes what?
People who identify as a woman.
Now, the issue with this line of reasoning is clear. If the word can mean anything, then it essentially means nothing. Let me give you an example. If I say that the bungo friendly is the best thing in the world, your next question is, what's a bungo friendly? And if my response is this,
no, I can't. Because it's not for me to say.
That doesn't help the conversation in any meaningful way. You still don't know what I'm talking about. But instead, if I said, well, a bungo friendly is a car, we can now move the conversation forward with a common understanding of what we're talking about. Here's a picture of a bungo friendly. It's important.
Part of the reason why I wanted to do this video was because I saw this other video from Nate the Lawyer again, and the title of it is NCAA says Trans University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thompson can compete against biological women. So this is the meat here. I'm not saying she, because it's a he's already finished, and he's 2 laps ahead from second place.
So here is Leah in lane 4. And now she is finishing the race. So she has finished her race. Now, we're going to see in the lane right next to her This woman is going to come in second place, but she's been lapped a couple of times. So now she has to go back the full length of the pool to finish the race. So let's see how long it's going to take her. Remember, Leah Thomas has finished the race.
This is so stupid.
Almost there. So as you can see, it wasn't even close. No.
It's just made up nonsense. You cannot go out and individually do this with every single person because one is based off of facts and the other one is just based off of your emotions and feelings. We can't do anything based off of your emotions and feelings. That's why legally you can't do anything about this. Because then you have to decide, well, then whose feelings and emotions are we going to go off? And why should we put yours above everybody else's? That turns into an argument. There's no argument whenever it's based off of biology because there's no decisions to be made. It is what it is.
To know, you didn't have to know what the car looked like to understand the concepts that we were talking about. So when LGBTQ plus advocates say that trans women are real women,
And the thing is that we need to realize that trans women are women. Trans men are men too.
It's like you couldn't even define it. So if you can't define it, how are you going to sit there and tell me that I need to identify you as a woman whenever you can't even define what a woman is, or that you want to lie and say that you cannot define what a woman is? It's like, the hell you can't. And it's been that way since the beginning for eons. So I don't know what the hell this person's talking about because they're just lying, making shit up. So with me, to just kind of recap here, the three big questions that come up is, well, legally, how should we deal with and identify and legalize trans women? It's like, you don't. There's nothing there. Or trans people. It's like, knock off the trans and it's just people. Because all people are afforded the same and equal rights. You don't get special treatment. But that's what you want. You want the special treatment where people are supposed to take time to identify what you want to pretend that you are today. Because at one point in time, that person identified as a man. Now they identify as a woman. Well, what if they want to go back to identifying as a man again? Or a Z, or Zer, or Fairykin, or whatever. It's like you can go do that in New York. It's like, why? I don't care. There's no utility in that whatsoever. There is a book that has been published, and they've done several of these, and it's titled, You Break 2 Laws Every Single Day. All right, it's 3 felonies a day. If you reside in America and it's dinner time, you have almost certainly broken the law. In his book, 3 Felonies a Day, civil liberties lawyer Harvey Silvergate estimates that the average person unknowingly breaks at least 3 federal criminal laws every day. And you can't claim that you didn't know. It's like if you go out and you kill somebody. So in some countries, for example, there are some countries in the world where you can go out and you can kill a gay person. And then if that person were to move here and were to kill a homosexual person, not knowing doesn't mean that they don't get punished. They're still going to prison. And it's like that for every single law out there. So the more laws you have, the more laws you're going to break. And it's like, yeah, well, what did you break? If somebody wants to, they can look into it all and they can find something that you've done. And I've seen this like on John Stossel's channel. He's had something like this too, where he set up like a lemonade stand. He's like, I've broken like 3 or 4 doing this because it didn't have a business set up, didn't have a permit to work on the street, and they were selling food that wasn't FDA approved, or it wasn't inspected for health and safety or something like that. And it was just a lemonade stand that kids set up from time to time, more so in the past than they do today. It's like, okay, so legally, it's just people that you have equal opportunity to do whatever you want to. So if you want to dress up and do whatever, it's like, go ahead. But you're not going to force it down my throat or anybody else's throat, because what makes you special? Why should you force that down my throat? Why can't I force what I want to down your throat? Or why can't you force down what you want down our throat? It's like, you can't. That's impossible. And then what about morally? Well, that depends on your morals. It's like, well, I'm not going to lie. There's a difference, though, between like little white lies, like telling kids about Santa Claus or about where babies come from. You know, it's like you don't tell a little kid about babies by describing a porno. You tell babies by the stork and the birds and the bees stories. That's what you tell. You tell it to them on their level. So little white lies, you know, oh, it's your birthday? No, we don't have a birthday party planned for you. I didn't even know it was your birthday. Versus something like this, where it has more serious dire consequences, such as the way how people are going to act and treat you and what the law is going to be. It's like, that's completely different. But then privately, sociably, it's like, yeah, you know what? If you want to say that you're a woman, or if you want to say you're a hairy, short little Ewok, or a hairy, what's the big one, Chewbacca? A Wookiee. It's like, go ahead, knock yourself out. You're not bothering anybody. But if I don't want to play, though, then I'm not going to play. You're not going to force me. But the same thing's true in reverse. And the consequences of that is that, well, we may not be friends. Guess what? I'll live. So will you. So no, it's all wrong. It's several questions being asked all at once. And so socially, it's like, yeah, do whatever. It doesn't bother me. Legally, no, you can go jump off a cliff. And morally, same thing. I'm not going to have any of it. I'm not going to lie about something like that. It serves no purpose, no utility. I'm not going to sacrifice my morals or whatever just to make you feel better. And this is what happens with government a lot, is that they just kind of tippy-toe around it. It's the same thing like pro-rights or pro-life. It's like, no, be specific. Because if you talk about, well, should a woman be allowed to get an abortion if her life is in jeopardy, you'll find out that damn near everybody's going to say, hell yeah, let her have an abortion. What the hell are you talking about? There's like an 80% chance that she's going to die. It's like, yes, let her have the damn abortion. What the hell's wrong with you? But if you're talking about, well, these two people, they met at a bar, they got drunk, they went back to one of their places and they had sex, they didn't use any protection, and now they want the taxpayers to pay for their mistake, then it's the opposite. It's like, hell no. My answer to that is, if they really want the abortion, go ahead, that's their decision, but I'm not paying for it. Don't use taxpayer money for that crap. Don't use taxpayer money for any of that on any level. Not for the facility, not for the procedure, not for any of it. They can deal with it all out of their own damn pockets. Nobody's bailing me out of my mistakes because I'm like everyone else. I'm just a damn human being. So, yeah. Good time to stop the video. Thanks for watching. Catch you again later. Bye.